trying to stretch to the edge. What a hurl by Jackson! Highlight reel touchdown! Receiver and the down by Louisville, national champion.
Hello, everybody, and it's good to see everybody. I'm your host tonight, Kyle, joined by Josh, Patrick, and Ross, and welcome back to another episode of the Third Banner Pod. I don't know how many of you guys have been listening to us for a while, but you may have noticed a little bit of differences. We've changed up our logo a little bit, changed up our introduction music, and we have a little bit of rebranding. And we've got a lot to talk about tonight, boys, but I'm excited that we finally got our rebrand out. I know that you guys, I want to say Josh in particular has worked really hard on the intro. Ty Elliott, who's not with us tonight, he's at work, but he worked hard on, he had somebody help draw us a bird because, the Louisville Cardinals trademark, can't use that. But hey, we had a lot of help with those two in particular, but we all had feedback. And we just want to kind of like spruce up some things as we get more established, and we'll also be bringing more content and expanding some things that we do as we grow as a pod. So that being said, how are you boys doing tonight?
Doing well, man. I think, sorry, Pat, but I think one thing I just wanted to say really quick is, I really appreciate working with this group of people because everybody's really dedicated to what we're doing. Whether it's like upgrading your setup, mic, we're always trying to do things to up the production value or up the quality of the show. So when we started this project, it was to make a better product for you guys. So really hope you guys like it. And thanks again, everybody, for all the hard work that you put into it.
Yeah, I got a fresh haircut for the pod rebranding to.
And you're wearing a hat.
And I'm still wearing a hat because I'm still embarrassed of my balding.
Great clip, dang it.
But no, Josh did an awesome job with the intro video. He's a graphic designer that moonlights as a lawyer. Just great job there. Ty put a lot of effort into the Ty and Josh put a lot of effort into the new logo. And all these guys, yeah, man, it was a 3-week process of hashing out details, a bunch of different takes for that intro video, trying to incorporate stuff and looking up trademarks and copyright laws and stuff like that. So it was a big process, and we hope you all enjoy it and like it. But yeah, man, it's a awesome day to rebrand. We've got some hopefully awesome news on the horizon this weekend for the actual Cardinals. But yeah, man, awesome.
Yeah. So well, hold on, Ross. You haven't said anything yet. How you doing, man?
I mean, I'm good.
Transition, but I don't want to transition.
Listen, I feel like my internet is crap right now. I've never had internet issues, and as I'm watching this, it's stuttering. So if I'm cutting out through any of this, I apologize. I don't know what's going on there, but
I can hear you fine right now.
Good. Pretty excited, man. This rebrand is something that we were all very passionate about. So very excited. This is kind of, as I look at it, and I don't know about you all, but, this first year was fantastic. It was a lot more than I think any of us thought it could be. Mm-hmm. And even if all of that is what it was like the beta version. And it's like, okay, we saw how this was going to go, and we see a vision of where this can go. So it was time. It was appropriate time to have this, this brand, refreshing of the brand and changing the logo, and very, very, very happy with how, we all we're able to come to an agreement to everything that we've worked on this past month. So very proud of it. Very proud of it. So we can get into some things about, things coming up here soon and, what we're going to do long term. But
we've got some big things coming up. I did want to say kind of the transition into a little bit about viewership. We still have, I check out the analytics of what's going on. When we first started, which made sense, we were at 75-25, 75% of our viewing hours were unsubscribed, which makes total sense when you first start out. Mm-hmm. But as we grow as a channel, we've narrowed it down some, but 55% of our audience are watch hours, not views, because anybody can view and leave, but our actual 55% of our total watch hours, which we have a ton, by the way, are unsubscribed people. So this is my plea. I don't like asking for subs. I don't, but it does help us out because what can happen is the road to 1,000. Once we get to 1,000, we will be able to support the pod monetarily to continue to grow. We're never going to make it big on this pod. That's not what we're about. We're not going to be racking in the dough. There's people with thousands of subs who do not rack in the dough, but we can sustain the pod where we can get things forward that we need. But it does take likes on videos to spread the algorithm, and it does take subs. We've never asked for subs on our Twitter account, not that I know of. I know I haven't. There's a couple other people with access. I haven't seen it. I certainly haven't on our personal page because it's not something I like to do. I feel like the content presents itself. But we've got a lot of people that watch a lot of Third Banner that aren't subbing. It would really help us out if you do. If you don't, you don't. Not forcing, obviously. Can't put a gun to your head. We're viral. But it sure would help us out. So I say all that to transition into what you guys really want to hear about tonight, which I assume starting out would be one Coleman Hawkins. We've heard for a long time now, Coleman Hawkins. And look out for Coleman Hawkins. We're really interested in Coleman Hawkins. And for a long time, guys, just being completely honest, I just felt kind of like it was the big whale that would have all these suitors. And that with our roster, especially as it continued to build, I'm like, he's not coming here. And that's if he doesn't stay in the draft. If he comes back in, I thought North Carolina would make a big push and try to land him. But I will say the people that continue to consistently say that Pat Kelsey and the staff were pushing for Coleman Hawkins, they were right. And I mean, it's not that I doubted that they were trying. It's that I didn't think Coleman Hawkins himself would be visiting. I didn't. But that is a product of a staff that's relentless. And I'll tell you what I hate, guys, is when people say, well, you guys are just giving them more money. Well, okay, that's literally the name of any element of business. Like everybody, if you really want somebody in business, you offer them more money. And you hope that your competitors aren't offering an astronomical amount of money. So that's like a big nothing to me. When people say that, that's like such an empty statement. It's like, oh, well, he wouldn't have went there if you guys didn't give him a bunch of money. We are not the only ones that are willing to pay Coleman Hawkins a big chunk of change. He's a game changer. And I just wanted to say, man, for our staff to be in on some of these guys, like when we landed Pryor, and now we're landing Coleman. Now we're getting a visit from Coleman Hawkins, and we could land him. Our roster is going to be sick if we land Coleman Hawkins.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you all, but before we landed, Case and Pryor, we were all, you had the whole Jaden Quaintance thing happening, and I was like, this Coleman in our Discord, I was like, this Coleman Hawkins kid, I hope that we're at least keeping some tabs on him because, it looks like there's going to be a chance he's going to pull his name out of the draft. And like he could make a huge difference on this team. And then here we are 3 big men later, and now we're still possibly in the running to get him. We've got a big bank, apparently, got a big piggy bank to give him. And like he'd make a big difference, man. And we can get into it, about him being a fit and everything, but it's going to be interesting to hear how his visit goes here coming up this weekend. I mean, I'm so excited. I'm so excited about adding this kid because he takes us from a potential, just outside top 25 team. Maybe we are a top 25 team. Like I think he makes us a legit top 15 contender. I really do. Get like consistently throughout the year. We might bounce up and down a little bit, but he's a difference maker. Like you can't say enough about it. He's an NBA talent. Like NBA is looking at him. Like he has legit NBA talent. So he could be, man, I'm so excited about adding this kid.
Yeah,
I mean,
oh, sorry. Go ahead, Pat. Go ahead.
I think if you would have told me, well, I've constantly said on here that the roster had some wiggle room, even after we added Waterman.
Yep.
That, you could move somebody to in the NIL era, you can move somebody to the red shirt and still get them what they need to both get through college from a financial standpoint and get their money that they need NIL wise. So I never thought this roster was completely done adding. I always thought if the right person came along, they would add. Now, I will say that Hawkins, to me, even before we added Pryor, was kind of a pipe dream. I always thought UNC would be the place that he would end up, or Arkansas. And then when we added Pryor, I was like, well, there's, these guys are very similar. There's no way we're going to go after this guy. So am I surprised that we're adding someone or trying to add someone? No, but I am surprised that we have enough juice left to go after Hawkins. And it's a pleasantly surprised. And man, I hope we close because as Ross and Kyle said, this roster is already very good, but you add Hawkins and you're talking about a legitimate top 15 to 25 team that can try to get to the second weekend. And you get to the second weekend of the tournament, who knows what happens from there. So, yeah, I'm pumped, and I can't wait to hear updates this weekend from his visit.
Yeah, and I think, the thing for me, kind of like you all said, like, it was one of those recruitments that just never seems to go our way. Like, I don't care who the coach is. I don't care when it is. Like, a quiet recruitment, like, it had, like, Arkansas written all over it or, a school like that. Mm-hmm. And I just never thought we were really an option. And honestly, like I think Kyle said, I think Ross said this. It was like Case on Pryor all over again. We're like, honestly, I didn't think we had a chance. And if we get both of them, like PK is just on a different level, dude. Like we have to adjust our lens for recruiting. Like we're recruiting at a whole different level that we haven't recruited at. Like, to be honest with, like even looking at Patino, like he didn't really start recruiting well and towards the end of his tenure. And so it's like, we have to adjust our lens for the type of guys that we're going after. But like, I think there are question marks of like, well, what's the roster going to look like? Or, someone's not going to get playing time now who we kind of expected, but I'd like to take like an NFL mentality. Like you take the best player available and it'll figure itself out, dude. Like you don't pass on Coleman Hawkins because you already have a few other guys in the fold. Like you cannot pass up on a talent like his.
Right.
I did want to pull up Anthony's comment. Anthony, I know you put that in there because I saw you responded to a comment I made on there, telling those guys they were crazy pretty much. The Sleepers media guys, look, I'm not going to – they seem to have good content, but I will say every time I get their stuff, somebody sends it to me, they're crapping on Louisville, they're crapping on Pat Kelsey. I got something for those boys if Coleman Hawkins commits there. They better be praying to the basketball gods Coleman Hawkins doesn't end up here because one guy said they have a 0% chance And then he upped it to 1% chance because he said Coleman Hawkins might watch this and decide to commit just because I said he wouldn't. So, those guys, I got something coming for those boys. They better pray to the basketball gods, sleepers,
Yeah,
whatever y'all call yourself.
I mean, this visit, right? So, like this visit, do we know if Pryor's on campus yet, or will he be by this weekend? I think if he's not, he's supposed to be by the time.
Everybody's supposed to be here, brother.
Yeah, by the time Hawkins gets. What I'm praying for the most, I'm hoping that Hawkins and Pryor just like hit it off. I mean, I hope that they realize that they could be like something like the Nasty Boys of like the 1990 Reds. Like they could be something that the nation either love them or hate them. I mean, you know what I mean? Like
they're the Mighty Ducks Bash Brothers.
Yeah, everybody's been making that Bash Brothers, Dean Porter, Fulton Reed comparison. But dude, they could be a story all in themselves if they embrace this. Like every game, the amount of just swagger and attitude that they're going to possibly bring. Because I think they're going to, if he commits and he plays here, I think they'll be on the court a lot together. I really do. So, I mean, it could be just, we could be so hated, and I'm going to love it because I've said for so many years now, everybody wants to make us the villain anyways. So let's just be the villain. If we're going to be something and you're going to put us in the corner, just let's be good at it. Like, that's what I want. Like, I want this kid to come here so bad, and I want him to be playing pickup with Case and Pryor and the rest of the guys, and they just hit it off. Like, just hit it off and be like, oh, we are going to destroy people.
So I want you boys to picture this. In my mind, we have two formidable starting lineups. Now, obviously, who I pick as the starters, I think are a better lineup than the second group. But just listen to this and just entertain me. Now, if you want to argue about one or two of the guys, fine. But I think you can pencil in Edwards, Hawkins, and Pryor as starters. I think you absolutely can. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say, let's just say, point guard, we're going to go with Chucky Hepburn. That's another one. I forgot. So
Chucky's got.
I think you got those four locked in.
Those four. You're right. I couldn't think. Chucky's your starting point guard. So that being said, your two guard, let's just say it's Javon Hadley. Mm-hmm. Let's just go there. Your shooting guard is Terrence Edwards. Your four would probably be Coleman Hawkins. He does not want to play the five.
Yeah.
So then after that, you get to the five, and that's going to be Pryor, I think. Case and Pryor's he's not a traditional five. I think he can play the five, and he'll be an absolute nightmare to guard at the five. So Hepburn, Hadley, Edwards, Hawkins, Pryor. Okay, so then you look at your second five up. You've got Rain Smith, Corin Johnson, Abubakar Traore, Noah Waterman, and James Scott. That's your second group.
Yeah.
That's your second group. And I mean, if you want to argue Corin Johnson should start over Javon, whatever, fine. You're picking it. Okay, then flip those. Because that's the one position I think you can look at and be like, look, maybe you can play. But I'm telling you right now, Hepburn, Pryor, Hawkins, and who am I missing? See, now I can't ever think of the fourth one. But Edwards. They're starting. They're almost guaranteed to start, barring some like miracle breakthrough from some other guys, which would be fine in my opinion. The only way they're not starting is if A, they get hurt, or B, someone else just takes like an astronomical leap that none of us saw. And maybe that's a guy like Corin Johnson. But again, we've got two formidable lineups. I don't believe in that whole platooning thing that Cal did, but we could do it.
Yeah.
I don't.
Roots. Don't forget him as your 11th guy. Like what? Top 30 player?
Not even make it. No, I don't want to say that.
I'm gonna.
On the court. It's not because he's a bad player. It's because he's got so many dudes in front of him.
Yeah, and he's a freshman.
Yeah.
He could be a damn good freshman, and I think he's got a chance for sure. He definitely didn't come here to ride the bench. You know what I'm saying? He's coming here to try to play.
Dudes that like I'm comfortable with.
Yeah,
out there for big men.
I think out of Hepburn, Edwards, Hawkins, Pryor, those four, those are. I said this earlier today in the Discord. I think there's a real good chance that Rain Smith might be that starting at that 2 spot if this goes out this way, because he is an absolute lights out 3-point shooter. And you look at the guys that you would be putting around him, like he would. Can you imagine doing a pick and roll at the top of the key with him and like Kason Pryor or Hawkins, the way that they can shoot? Like, that's going to be a problem. Like, that's going to be a big problem. And if you try to cheat and you try to hedge to close out on the 3-point shooter, because both of those guys can shoot, you're going to get the big man rolling to the basket, and it's going to leave a wide open lane. So, and both of those guys can put the ball on the floor, talking about Kason Pryor and Hawkins. Both of those guys can put the ball on the floor, and they're above the rim finishers. So, like, I think I would love to see that lineup, because I think that could be, you put Rain Smith in with those guys, and man, you're talking about an offensive lineup that is going to put up a ton of points.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, to your point, Kyle, I think a lot of people are going to look at this and talk. We live in Kentucky. We saw it with the rivals down the road. They're going to talk about platooning. And, the advantages of platooning are, the chemistry that's built within those 5-man units, and the fact that people know more of the minutes they're going to get on a game-to-game basis, the role they're going to have on a game-to-game basis. I'm against the platoon, because especially with this roster, there's so much versatility that you can put out a ton of different lineups in different situations where the players will complement each other, rather than just sticking to, pretty much a straight platoon, which is what Cal did. And honestly, was the downfall of that unbelievably talented team he had that year. So while I understand the platoon talk, one, I don't think it's going to happen. And two, I hope it doesn't happen, because there's just so many different lineups that you can attack a team with. And there's going to be teams we play that, different matchups are going to be needed. So there's going to be different units out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love the versatility that there is in this roster. There's key things that every single person that they've added to this roster, like there's like 3 things that you can always seem to go back to that player has or does. Like, they're a good passer. They can pick and pop and shoot from outside, and they come from winning winning programs last year. They have previous experience of being winners. So, like, it is I love the versatility of this roster, and I think you hit it right on the head, Pat, that there's going to be where you're going to see a lot of coaching this year is looking at the coaches finding the matchups that are going to be able to exploit teams' weaknesses from game to game. And I think that I'm hopeful that we're going to see that this year. So yeah, I don't think it's ever going to be like necessarily just like a set roster. Like, you're going to see a lot of movement throughout the season with the roster.
So my big thing about Coleman Hawkins, before Coleman Hawkins was here, I always look at a roster. I'm like, what do I like? What do I not like? What would I fix if I could? So before Coleman Hawkins, visit was confirmed and we knew like, okay, Coleman Hawkins is coming here to visit, I was still kind of assuming like, hey, he might be a long shot, even though we're trying. He's got a lot of people in the front court. He may not want that. So with that mindset, I'm like, okay, with who we have a decent roster. But if I could fix something, I would add, we need another mega scorer. And again, Coleman Hawkins struggled with an injury most of this year. His stats are a bit deceiving too. He was also playing with Shannon at Illinois, who's a monster of a player. So he was an absolute dude. And so that was the star of the team. And so he kind of had to take a back seat to him on offense a little bit. But we needed, in my opinion, a dude. Terrence Edwards could be that dude, but he's coming up in a level of competition. His efficiency numbers aren't as good against better competition. Doesn't mean he's a bad player. There's just a few outliers because there wasn't much of a sample size of really good games against good teams. Like there just wasn't much so having a couple of struggling games against the better competition may not be indicative of anything. But it was one of those things where I was like, we really need another definite dude. And I was like, okay, we need that. We need a 12th guy because I said last time, we really going into the season with 11 guys available. If there's injury issues, we're in trouble. So we address both of those things, in my opinion, if we get Hawkins. We kill two birds with one stone. And now I'm looking at it, and I mean, we've got a big man defender in James Scott who can defend at the 5 in the front court, and we can shoot all over the court at almost every single position. And my daughter's in the background celebrating and cheering because she's happy too, and she should be.
She is so pumped about Hawkins.
She's a future big fan when she gets old enough. But I just imagine, how are you going to guard these guys? If Hawkins comes here, they can all dribble in the starting lineup and they can all shoot the rock.
Yeah.
The spacing's going to be astronomical.
Well, and what I really like is, everyone's kind of hit on it, but, we're going to do that. And I don't want to call it a platoon system because I won't do that. We're going to run out. We're going to play 10 guys. And I think, to your point, Kyle, and I think Pat mentioned it too, there's going to be certain games where James Scott's going to play a huge role. He's going to come in and he's going to, be really key on defense. And we have enough scorers otherwise that, we're not going to need him to do a whole lot, like rim run and, catch a few oops, and that's plenty. But yeah, so I think we have a lot of versatility and we have a lot of guys who just do a lot of different things well. And what kind of surprised me watching some of Hawkins' film is he's a plus defender when he wants to be. When he really wants to turn it on, dude, he blocks. I think he has a 3% block rate, which if you don't look at that stat, maybe you don't know what 3% means. That is a really good number. That is well above average. Mm-hmm. So I think he does a lot of things well. And I know you mentioned this too, Pat, that he averages over a block and a steal a game, at any level of college, but especially in the Big Ten, one of the better college basketball conferences, to have those kind of numbers is pretty wild. So, you add a guy who's a great offensive weapon. He can also play defense. We can do so much with the different lineups that we're going to be able to match up with most teams. But yeah, dude, I don't know how you defend this team, Kyle. I think that's a great, I'm not sure. I'm not sure when you spread us all out how you're going to defend.
I mean, I think that's the point. I mean, you look at, again, going back, the guy, they're able to space the floor so well with the versatility, all the guys that are on the roster, the ability to shoot, minus, somebody like Traore. He's not a huge threat from outside, but he's a dude that is going to get his every other way. He's going to make his impact felt on both sides of the floor in every other way, but extending the floor from a 3-point perspective. But you look at how guys are, a lot of these guys, especially the big men, are very good passers, and they show high basketball IQ and have good vision, and they able to see the outlet passes to open shooters. Defenses are going to have a really hard time covering the floor. There's going to be a lot of open shots, should be a lot of open shots. So So I mean, it's man, I can't believe where we've been the past 3 years, and then you look at where we are right now. I mean, this roster, I don't believe that we're overselling it or being overzealous when we say like there's legit reasons to have legitimate excitement about this team this year. Like you get a Hawkins, I mean, that makes I will say it right now, like it's a second weekend team, and it, that might put a lot of maybe unfair expectations on Pat Kelsey and this staff, but they're just absolutely going gangbusters in the portal, flipping this roster the way that they did, man, and can't give them enough credit. They deserve a ton of credit for how hard they've worked, and they continue to keep putting in the work. Like you can't say that enough. Like you've got to give them all their flowers for that.
Yeah. I think, I've heard you guys talk about offense and how it's going to be extremely hard to match up with us offensively. And I agree with that 100%. But I think when I look at Pat Kelsey teams at Charleston, at Winthrop, the theme that impresses me most about this team compared to those teams are is the defensive versatility. When you look at the NBA level, and especially if you watch the playoffs, the teams that are most successful are the teams that can constantly switch. You get picked up at the top, and your 4 or 5 can guard guards. And I think we at you don't see that as much at the college level. Usually that's how people try to, take advantage of the other team. But I think we've got some guys here, especially if you add Hawkins. Do I want to see Hawkins guarding the 5 a lot? Probably not, but he can switch 1 through 4, and I feel comfortable with that. Same with Pryor. And I think that gives you the ability to do a lot on defense. When you have big guys that can keep up, have the foot speed to guard perimeter players, you're talking about a defense that can be dominant too. And teams are going to score some points on us because our pace is going to be so fast. But
Yeah.
I think this defense is going to be something you've never seen out of a Pat Kelsey team.
Yeah,
and that's
their
what I'm
ability-
looking forward to.
Yeah, I mean the game. We all know that the international game and the expanding of how important the 3-point line is to the game. We've seen at the next level, at the NBA level, and how players are getting much bigger, much taller, much longer, and playing like guards. That trickle down effect is only going to make its way into the college game, and already is. So the fact that we could potentially have 2 6'10" guys that can switch and guard out on the perimeter, honestly, to ward off 3-point shots. But if a guy tries to take them off the dribble, they actually have the foot speed to actually close and maintain defensive position. That is huge. Like, it is absolutely huge. I applaud you for pointing that out, Pat, because I do. As long as the fundamentals and the discipline is there, I think that we could be a very surprisingly good defensive team this year.
Yeah, I think the last point I want to make, Kyle, before we move on, is just about, in terms of roster construction. Pat Kelsey, he did a lot of research into these players. Like, I don't think a lot of people realize, like, sure, I think guys like Coleman, Hawkins, and like Pryor, like the talent's there. Like, he likes certain aspects of their personality. But like, in terms of the entire team, like, he went and talked to these guys' high school coaches. Like, he went and talked to like their extended family. Like, he did a ton of research to make sure that like he had the right type of dudes. And like, I think we've mentioned it before, but like a lot of these guys have played in the tournament. Like, I mean, he really, not only is the roster well constructed from like a player versatility perspective, I mean, these are also like leaders individually. And so like personality wise, like I think there's a lot to like there. And, you know, I just hope that, you know, everybody meshes well, because if they do, I think you have a special team.
Yeah. So I did want to say, to echo that point, kind of like how it's just incredible to be where we're at, considering where we were just a few months ago.
Yeah.
And I know that back then there was this idea of, well, you know, if you can keep Brandon Huntley Hatfield, keep Brandon Huntley Hatfield. If you can keep Mike James, maybe you keep Mike James, have a couple of people. But here's the thing. I still see people doing this in the national media. They can't get the idea of what we were out of their head. But Pat Kelsey gutted everything. The staff gutted every single thing. There is nothing left over unless you want to say Aiden McCool, who's a walk-on. There's nobody else. There's no other sign of Kenny Payne's tenure. So, no, we aren't coming out of anything. We aren't like trying to get out of this negative psyche or mindset. The fan base is, but the people that matter the most on the court, the players, the coaching staff, that's why you have to start anew. It's not that these guys like Brandon Huntley Hatfield, Mike James, JJ Traynor, all those guys can't be successful somewhere else. Mm-hmm. They needed a new start. And you're not going to do anybody a service when you've had two, and in some cases three, because you have to go back to the Pegues Mac final year. It was a disaster too. It just looks like less of a disaster than the last 2 years. So it's been 3 really bad years in a row. You have to gut the entire program. And it's just incredible that a few months later, we're sitting here talking about if you add Hawkins, without Hawkins, the roster's solid and it's a respectable job. And it's really a great job by the staff. But if you add Hawkins, you're talking about, like Ross said earlier, potentially a top 15 roster. You're talking about that when in March, we were all miserable as hell, just trying to get to the last game. And we, you know, it's just incredible. He wiped the slate clean, started over brand new. So all these people saying like, well, Louisville has to prove that they're out of, you know, the negative downward spiral they've been in. We're out of it because you can't find it. You can't point to it anywhere.
Pat, you're muted.
In terms of roster, I mean, you couldn't – if you ask national guys who did the best job with the circumstances in the portal, they'd be lying to you or they're not paying attention if they don't say Patrick Kelsey. So now it's all about bringing all this talent together, making it fit, and going out there and winning games. And we have, you know, Kelsey has 5 months to mold these guys, get that chemistry going, and put in that team out in the best position to go out there and win games when November hits. But in between now and then, you know, he has won. He has won. There is nothing else from fan involvement. I mean, hopefully he does that in the summer too, but from fan involvement, roster construction, you know, getting a head start, you know, the guys we're in on for this next 2025 class. I can't think, I could not name one thing that I wish I could see out of Patrick Kelsey that I haven't seen yet. It's incredible, man. And I was here, I was on Twitter before this hire saying, you know, after May turned us down, like, come on, we got to get going. You know, we were the first job available and all these jobs are filled. And I don't know if this was the game plan. I mean, obviously it wasn't because we wanted May, but man, I'm not complaining because it has fallen into perfect alignment of what I wanted to see as a U of L fan from our next coach.
Yeah, so real quick, I did want to point out Michael Price. He's always helping us out with the subs and the likes. We appreciate it, Mike. 197 subs away from 1,000. I don't know, and this was earlier, so it may be even less. But look, guys, if you just joined us and didn't hear me earlier, we have a ton, like 55% of our audience that watches hours of the Third Banner Pod has not subbed, and it is very beneficial to us if you sub. If you're listening that much, please sub. Also, please like the video. It does help with the algorithm. Thank you guys so much for being supportive. And I don't want to beat it in the ground, but I also feel like we got to push that a little bit more. So that being said, guys, I want the final thoughts about basketball, if you guys have any, because we do have to talk about a bit of a baseball situation.
Yeah. I want to ask the group a question. So we talked about this a little last week, and like, you know, we're all talking like when we add Coleman Hawkins, where we're going to be at. Well, you know, 0-3 is not the like they are not Louisville, like we are not their favorite school. We'll just put it that way. Like usually a guy commits to us and we lose a star. Whether that's really true or not, like it just feels that way. And we are their number one portal class without Hawkins, right? So you add Hawkins and like, I mean, you pretty inarguably like you have far and away the best portal class. So we talked about this a little last week, but now that it's looking like Hawkins is a reality, like has like Pat Kelsey moved into like the elite recruiter role? Like I don't want to put unfair expectations on him, but like, man, I mean, he's going up against Coach Cal with all the money he has at Arkansas now for both Pryor and Hawkins. And like, I mean, kind of left him in the dust. Like, I don't know, dude. Like, has he moved into that tier? I think he's got to be close. Like he's at least a plus recruiter, you know? So I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I think after, you know, you can at least say he's an elite portal recruiter at this point. I mean, you go out and get, you know, 13, maybe 14 portal guys, and completely revamp a roster and get, you know, what On3 is going to rank as probably the best portal class. Some other, you know, sites and some guys that do a bunch of, you know, statistical analysis will rank in the top 5. I mean, yeah, he's an elite portal recruiter. And then you add to that Roofs as his first high school commitment. You know, there's going to be people that say, well, you know, I want to see a full high school class before I crown Pat Kelsey as a guy that can compete with a John Calipari, you know, on the recruiting trail. But I mean, it's hard to argue with the results of year one that this guy has come to the major college basketball and is out there recruiting with the big dogs, because it's evident from the roster he's put together.
Yeah, so I did want to mention, I see people talking about it in the chat. Before we get to the baseball situation, which I know some of you who are really diehard baseball have a lot to say about that. But I did want to say tomorrow we have a unique time. We usually do our Friday episode on Friday. That's why we call it the Friday episode. But we have a guest tomorrow, Matt Brown, who, when it comes to college football 25, the new EA college football game that everybody's waiting on, everybody's raving on, it comes out in July. This guy is going to be on our pod at 6 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow. And we're going to be on with him. We're going to talk about the game because this guy has played the game. He knows everything about the game. He has broken down this game for 2 years. Every little piece of information he could get, he tries to get. He writes articles about it. The guy knows the ins and outs of the game. So all you video game heads, your football heads, if you're nostalgic, dying for NCAA football 25 to come out, please tune in tomorrow. Ty Elliott will be hosting that one. He's really excited about the game. He's pumped. And so I think it'll be a really good episode. So that being said, I think we should probably kind of look at transitioning into baseball.
Before we do that, I want to thank Jonathan for his donation.
Didn't even see it on screen. I'm so sorry.
Thank you very much, man. Every time I know I feel like I speak for the other guys. every time I see a donation come on here, like it is crazy to think about. I mean, I don't think any of us have any wild dreams about retiring from our professions and our jobs, but we do have a lot of pride and put a lot of work into this pod, and the fact that you donate means a lot, because it's a reflection of our pride and our hard work. So thank you very, very much. It's very much appreciated. So thank you very much, sir. Appreciate you.
And to answer your question, Jonathan, and other guys disagree, I think if I had to predict, I think the home opener will be a sellout. I think there's a ton of momentum. I think Pat Kelsey is going to make sure it happens.
Yep.
And you combine all that with, the desire of the fan base to watch winning basketball that means something again. And I think the Yum Center is going to be rocking, even though it's Moorhead State. It's going to be rocking in there, man.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen what he does at like a school like College of Charleston, riding around on a golf cart with a megaphone, throwing out T-shirts. Like, I mean, what is this dude going to be doing? What is this dude going to be doing, man? I mean, he's going to make sure the word, and he's got good people behind him in our athletic department that are going to make sure that he's being heard, and what he wants is being put out there, So the Louisville machine behind a Pat Kelsey, I couldn't have predicted it. I mean, we don't have to go there, but like I'm so impressed by what he's done, and what I have so much faith in what he's going to do. Like I told him in person, from one Cincinnati boy to another, man, that is a Louisville fan. Thank you very much. Like, I can't wait to see where we're going here in the short term, the next few months, and the long term, the next 3 to 5 years. I mean, it feels like it's going to be a hell of a ride. I mean, it's going to be so much fun, because you can't match what he brings. There's not really anybody that, it's like he's a football coach on a basketball team, coaching a basketball team. You see this type of energy from football coaches. Not you just generally don't see this from like basketball coaches. And he's killing it, man. I mean, he's just killing it.
Ross, I want to thank you for pulling up that donation. I somehow missed it. I was in the heat of a conversation, totally missed it. But thank you so much, Jonathan, and thank you all for your support, your continued support.
Absolutely.
And I will sum it up by saying that Coleman Hawkins is expected to visit on Friday. I saw a couple people asking like exactly when. The expectation is he gets here on Friday. And the interesting thing will be to monitor if he sets up any other visits. As of now, I do not know of any. I haven't seen anywhere where he's been listed as visiting anywhere else. We've heard random schools here and there that come and go, but nothing that's stuck. And so what you have to hope is that we seal the deal on the visit, and that he just doesn't set up any other visits. So we'll be monitoring that. It's a big deal. The fact that they're even getting him a visit with this kind of roster is impressive. But at the end of the day, you don't just celebrate visits. You don't waste your time if you don't think you're going to land them. So we'll be on Coleman Hawkins watch the entire weekend, and I have faith that the staff can definitely seal the deal. That being said, guys, we got to talk about baseball. And I'm the first one. I lead into the topic. I'm not a huge baseball fan, so I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know a ton about baseball. I'm not. But I do know what Dan McDonnell has meant to this community. I do know that when I did watch baseball, because I've watched some, I'm not going to sit here and say I've never watched Louisville baseball. Usually when they were in the playoffs, I'd watch. But I'm a very unattached fan. I've never been huge into the sport. But I know a lot of people here are. I know Ross and Pat, you two in particular. I don't know about you, Josh, but I know Ross and Pat are big baseball fans. And Dan has meant a lot to this community. And, of course, the rumors are that he could be taking the South Carolina job, that they're interested. And I haven't seen anything as of now saying that interest has died down on either side. Obviously, things have not gone the way Louisville fans that have gotten accustomed to McDonnell baseball teams being the last 4 years. It just hasn't been very good. And what I think is interesting is you've got two different sides of this. I hear two different things from people that are close to either the athletic department on our end or Dan's camp. And it kind of shows where the divide is to me, because one faction will tell you Dan endorses NIL. He's just not getting the resources he needs. And if he were getting the resources he needs, it would sure help things out and we would probably be in a better position. And he's been frustrated with not being able to get access to those resources. But on the other end, you have a camp and a faction that says, look, he doesn't embrace it. He doesn't push it. He won't push against it necessarily, but he's not really a big fan of it. And it comes across. And there's a loud faction of that. And I don't think you can just simply dismiss that faction because these aren't people. Like I said, I don't know. I don't follow baseball. But there are people that really follow baseball in this community that swear NIL is not the issue as far as having access to it. It's not promoting it. So you've got these two camps, and to me, it just represents a divorce. I'm on the outside. I don't know what you think, Ross or Pat. I'm really curious what you guys think. To me, I don't see this one turning around.
Yeah. I mean, first off, let's start with the obvious here. Louisville baseball before Dan McDonnell was basically non-existent. You had one NCAA tournament appearance in 2002. Since then, I think the number's 14, 15, 9 regional championships, which means 9 super regionals, and 5 trips to the College World Series. I mean, that resume right there is one of the best in the country in that, 15, 17-year span. So Louisville baseball is Dan McDonnell. It's kind of like Louisville basketball with Denny Crum. Louisville basketball was Denny Crum. Denny Crum built Louisville basketball. I don't have any inside perspective into the program. I hear the same things that Kyle does. You've got a side that wants to take the athletic department's, side in this. And you almost put this like it's a political argument. And I don't listen, the athletic department and Dan work together. But there's a side out there that wants to blame the athletic department and the fans for not giving the support that they need to Dan and the program. There's a side that wants to blame Dan for not embracing NIL, the transfer portal, in this new era of college sports. I personally think, without having inside knowledge, that the answer, like all these things, probably falls in the middle.
Yeah.
We as an athletic department and a fan base, you love baseball. There's enough money out there in the city of Louisville. There's enough baseball fans. This is a home of the Louisville Slugger. That there's enough. There's the pipeline out there to be had for NIL money and for facility upgrades for this team and this program. It's Josh's job to go out there and landmine those. And it is also Dan's job to go out there, promote the program, lean on some of these former Major League Baseball players that are now, hitting those big-time contracts in the MLB. Your Will Smiths, your Henry Davis, who had a big signing bonus. And Henry has put some money down into this
Absolutely.
program.
Yep.
You develop those guys, you can lean on them to help the program out. So it goes both ways. The athletic department needs to get out there and make sure this program's supported, and Dan needs to go out there and make sure the program's supported too. In terms of NIL and the transfer portal. Yes, I think there's an adjustment that needs to be made there. You look at a team like Kentucky, who's having their best year ever, and it's because they went out and got a bunch of upperclassmen in the transfer portal.
Mm-hmm.
And you say, hey, well, there's usually not MLB quality guys in the transfer portal because after their junior, senior years, they're going to the MLB draft. That might be true, but there are quality baseball guys out there.
That was also before NIL.
That want to win. And there are guys that would go to the major leagues in the past that now you have NIL that you can entice them to stay and come to your school. So I think an adjustment needs to be made by the staff there to attack the portal and use NIL, while also there needs to be, a movement by our athletic department's 502 circle too to get the NIL money needed. But we got to use that NIL money when it's there. So that's on Dan. And then my last thing that watching this team, the biggest thing you can point to, high school recruiting's still good. The hitting's still good. I think Matt McGavick kind of hit on this on LSL tonight. This was a year where our fielding and base running was not good. And that's kind of not a trend that you've seen over the past years. The trend you've seen is that the pitching has completely fallen off the cliff. And my opinion on that is you're still getting high-ranked high school guys pitching-wise. But what these guys killed it with, 5-10 years ago was going out there and getting guys that threw heat. You saw the Birdie brothers throwing 100 miles per hour. We had guys that threw in the upper 90s. And that was kind of the unicorn 5 or 10 years ago. It is no longer the unicorn. Guys all over the place are throwing 95 plus miles per hour. The theme now in pitching is your spin rates. The slider's the best pitch in the MLB right now. That off-speed, developing off-speed offerings is big. And if you've watched our team the past 3 or 4 years, we got guys that can throw it hard, but they cannot throw off-speed pitches for strikes or get guys to chase their off-speed offerings. And that is the philosophy that has to change when we're developing and looking at these pitchers, because that's where I see the biggest struggle. And listen, this team was a top 25 team when you look at the hitting. The pitching is what killed it, and the pitching is what's killed it 3 of the past 4 years. Ever since that Detmers, Bobby Miller, rotation that, God, unfortunately, that team was going to win the College World Series. That team was going to win it. Ever since then, the pitching's gone downhill, and that's what they've got to figure out how to fix. And is Dan and Williams the person to do that? I hope so, because Dan is Louisville baseball, but there's got to be some hard discussions between these two camps, the athletic department and Dan McDonnell, to try to figure out how we move forward here. I hope we can, because I don't want to see Dan leave on such a sour note here, man. It's not similar to Denny Crum, because Denny was at the end of the line and it was obvious, and I don't think Dan's there, but you want to see your historic coaches go out on top. So I hope we can make it work, man. Ross, I know you probably have a lot of opinions.
I'll tell you, and I've been sitting on this thought for a few days. I haven't shared it. I have the avenue to do it now, so I'm like to hear it. Here it goes. To me, this Dan McDonnell situation and the crossroads that we're at right now feels very, very similar to Calipari and UK fans and where that was just a few months ago. He brought them some of their highest highs in their program. And, I don't think Kentucky fans ever saw a situation where Calipari was just going to walk away the way that he did, and he didn't leave the program in a bad state, but just leave it kind of in limbo. And if Dan were to walk away at this point, that's kind of what it feels like. I don't think any of us could have foreseen Dan walking away from the U of L baseball program, leaving it this way. I'm with you. I hope that there are hard discussions made, and there are concessions made, and there are agreements made that things need to change. I mean, even before we were at where we are right now, we've been hearing two things: that one, that the Louisville facilities need upgraded, and there's more money that needs to be poured in to the program. We're hearing that is in the works, that is going to be done now. Two, we've heard that there might be some hesitation from the coaching staff to embrace NIL the way it needs to be embraced, the way that other programs in the athletic department have, and those coaches running those programs. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I feel like what we've been seeing, those results over the past 2 years, they kind of speak for themselves. Like there's been a drop off. So why has that drop off happened? It's not like Dan and Roger Williams and these guys just lost the ability how to coach. That doesn't happen. That does not happen. The talent has fallen off. Okay. And why has the talent fallen off? Well, the NIL era has changed college sports forever. So if you may not like it, but you need to embrace it, because it is here and it's not going anywhere. And where I'm kind of at is what you were saying, Kyle, is that I could never foreseen a situation where Dan possibly walked away, leaving the program like this. But this feels like the time that is maybe the most appropriate for an amicable split, between Dan and the U of L athletic department. And it's sad to even say that. Like, I never thought he was going to take the Mississippi State job. I never thought he was going to take any of those other jobs, but I really do think that things and the stars align that Dan's going to take this South Carolina job. He's got a ton of connections in South Carolina, him and his family. I mean, a lot of connections. There's a lot of things to why they would want to move back there.
Great say. I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, it is hard to come to grasp with that. But I mean, if you're Dan, I look at it from Dan's standpoint. Okay, if those rumors are really true that he doesn't like this NIL era of college sports and he doesn't really want to embrace it, he doesn't have to do that at an SEC school. They're going to have so much more money that they can just pour it in, unlike an ACC school's going to be able to with their new contracts that are coming up, the booster fan base. South Carolina has a huge booster fan base. I mean, tons. Like, he's not going to have to go out there and sell NIL. And he'll be able to do exactly what he wants to do. Like, NIL is not even a thing. Like, everything else will take care of itself as long as the South Carolina collective has their stuff together.
So,
you know what I'm saying?
Heads, I want to know, like, who you guys think is next?
Well, I mean, I've said it in the chat, and, I think I saw Danny Gray say it. Like, the talk is that the Troy baseball head coach, Skylar Meade, who played for U of L, he grew up in this area, he grew up a Card. That is the guy that I think people are kind of like leaning into at this moment, at this current time. It sounds like those feelers, from at least their perspective, like from their side, have already made it known that, hey, we would be willing to come home. And you look at it, you're looking at how does U of L baseball make up this NIL differential? Well, you have a lot more money to give towards NIL baseball if you're paying a coach a lot less money than Dan McDonnell, right? So, you know, I'd hate to see this go down the way that it feels like it's going, but it just with the words today or like last night, you started hearing, you know, from camps that U of L has their NIL situation figured out for baseball now. Like that feels very, very, very much like NIL U of L people trying to get the word out that our NIL situation for baseball is good, you know, like trying to get out ahead of it. And it just feels like it's going somewhere where we never thought it was going to. I'm with you, Kyle. Like it feels like the time has come, and the situation is like perfect for Dan to leave now.
Yeah, Pat, I wanted to get real quick, see if you had any final thoughts about baseball. 'Cause I know me and Josh, I mean, I don't like to provide input on things I'm not very knowledgeable about. So I can talk a lot.
I'm listening.
I don't have information. I have nothing to talk about. So, Pat, what are your final thoughts about the direction of where the baseball program could or should go in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, listen, this backstory. I'm a CPA that goes through a tax season, and at the end of every
it almost killed him this year.
At the end of every tax season, one of my favorite things in the past to do is to go out and watch Louisville baseball in the final run of the season and in the regionals, the super regional, you know, because we've hosted so many of those. So as a fan, I want us to get back to that level. And that level was not too long ago. It's not like U of L basketball when the last time we were, you know, in the second weekend of the tournament was a decade ago. So we're not that far removed. I think this situation is fixable, and I think it's fixable with Dan at the helm. And I hope that it gets fixed with Dan, because that's what I know from as a Cardinal baseball fan is Dan McDonnell. I remember I'm a big Phillies fan. BJ Rosenberg was in our bullpen probably about 12 years ago. He was one of the first Cardinals in the Major League Baseball ever, about 12 years ago. And this year we started out the MLB season with the most rostered players of any college in the nation. So that tells you how much Dan grew this program and the quality of talent he brought in here. With that said, to Ross's point, Kyle's point, if Dan doesn't want to be here anymore, if he's wants to go back home, I support that. And, you know, we are University of Louisville baseball is bigger than one coach, even though Dan McDonnell built this program. And I think we can find another coach that can succeed here too. So I'll close it with, I hope we work stuff out and we're back on top with Dan McDonnell as our coach. But if not, I think you can go find a Skylar Meade and you can build off of the foundation that Dan built over the past 2 decades almost.
Yep.
Yeah, and selfishly, I just want all the Louisville fans to come to Omaha, because that's only like an hour and a half away from me, and there's not enough of y'all over here. Like, I was at the last March Madness tournament during Mac's first year, and like, dude, it was me and Bill Murray, and that was like it. So like, I need y'all to come over here. So I need us back to get back to Omaha so I can go and hang out with everybody.
I will eat all the Casey's pizza.
So it's definitely a situation to monitor. I don't know what to do. One of the kids like Callie down here, she's bouncing around, so I keep muting. But I did want to talk about football, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to do with her doing this. So does somebody else want to touch on the 2 commitments that we got recently until I can get her under control so it's not banging around in the background?
You got Animal the drummer back there? My big babies.
I mean, I can kind of go. I haven't watched a ton of film on these guys. I've watched a little bit, but we had a big recruiting weekend, a lot of big time prospects this past weekend, and we came out with 2 commitments so far. You've got LeBron Hill, an Indiana wide receiver. He's a 3-star on 247, 6'4", 180. So he's a big guy. Probably is going to have to put on some weight when he gets to college. Didn't look like a guy that gets off the line extremely quick, but for his size has some decent speed once it gets going. It looked like he had some decent hands. I think he's a guy that, he's the prototypical Brohm recruit so far. He's going to be a guy that they hope in 2 years is ready to go. And until then we'll have the depth or use the transfer portal to fill in there. The guy that I am really, and I'm excited about LeBron Hill, the guy I'm really excited about, who's also a 3-star and actually has a lower rating than Hill does, is the linebacker from Florida, Caleb Mateo. I hope I'm pronouncing Mateo.
Exactly right.
I don't.
I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his last name right, but I watched some of his highlights. He's a thumper, man. He attacks the line of scrimmage. He closes holes and he hits, man. And I think he's a guy, he's under the radar right now, but I think he's one of those guys, like obviously different positions, but like an Ashton Gelati that, Ashton was a 3-star out of high school too and made an impact as a freshman and now is an All-American. The tape I've watched on this dude, again, different positions, he's a linebacker, but this guy is a thumper and has potential. And that's kind of what I got. I don't know if you guys have some opinions on these two.
I don't. I haven't watched really any tape. I'm just going to be honest. But I will give a shout out to Mason Mims getting that 4-star.
Yeah, that was some other big news this past week. Mims got a 4-star, and from all I've heard from reports, his dad actually is a poster on Jody's website. So he says that a lot.
I thought you were gonna say a poster on Jody's wall there for a second.
No, maybe that's so too. You never know.
I was like, oh boy, where are we going?
But no, Mason Mims killed it at these Elite 11 regionals. Unfortunately, didn't get named to the final Elite 11. But according to his dad, a lot of the evaluators and coaches at these Elite 11 sites said that your kid's the best kid here. And a lot of that Elite 11 seems to be political in the sense that
it is.
The guys that are ranked high going in get the invite. So yeah, that was big time news. And also our offensive lineman, Jake Cook, who was another guy that we got that was under the radar, wasn't highly rated. He has been killing it at camps, and I think Rivals actually has him as a top 200, 250 player now. So yeah, you look at these guys, people complain about high school recruiting. I'm there with you sometimes. I want the best of the best. But I think what these guys have proven so far, especially early in the process, is that they can identify guys early that the big boys end up coming after. And then obviously we got to keep them. But there's been a couple, these 2 recruiting cycles, there's been a couple guys that have been lowly rated that by the time the end of the evaluation season comes upon us, that they're 4-star guys. So yeah, the 2 guys we added this weekend, I think, are going to be good. Again, I'm really excited about the linebacker. And then, yeah, you see guys as they start going to camps that we got on early, really shooting up on all these recruiting sites.
Yeah, so I'm with you on the linebacker. Really excited about Caleb, bringing him in. I know there are diamond in the roughs, and then there's a class full of diamond in the roughs, which isn't good because there's not a lot of diamond in the roughs that make it. You always hear about the ones that do. That's the thing about diamonds in the rough. People will point, like in basketball, well, Russ Smith was a 2-star. Okay, well, let's talk about all the other 2-stars. Were they as productive as Russ Smith? 99% of them were not. So in football, it's the same thing. You'll get a Bilal Powell, for example. You get more of them in football because there's more players. But you don't want to stack a class of diamond in the roughs. And I say all that to lead to this point. I think this kid is a diamond in the rough.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's based on highlights. It's based on watching some huddle film. Obviously don't know much beyond that, but he has explosiveness. He's fast and he hits hard. So to me, those are some of those things you can't teach. The explosiveness and the quickness, you can't teach. Now he clocks in at 215 pounds as of third shift tonight, but I don't know if that's accurate or not. You need to gain another 20, 25 pounds in order to be an effective college linebacker. Does he lose some of that speed if he does that? I don't know. So these are the kind of variables that you're working with when you take some of these under the radar guys. But as far as potential goes, I think he's got a lot of it. So I'm excited about that one. LeBron Hill, 6'5" receiver. He can't teach height and he can't teach catch radius. He has a big arm span. He has a big catch radius he can throw it to. Possession receiver. I will say, looking at his film, it just appeared to me that, his get off on the line when you snap the ball, he doesn't have that initial burst that I would like to see. And then also when he gets out in the open field, I notice he gets caught a lot. So I don't think he's ever going to be the guy that burns you. I do want to see us get some more speed. So I don't mind the ad, but I'm not super pumped based on anything that I saw on film. Just being honest. So He could be a great player. But I mean, just looking at it, I want to see even this year's receiving core. I don't think going in the next season, I don't feel like has enough speed, if I'm being completely honest. You've got Colin Lacey. You've got Katarius Hicks. But once you get past those two, I mean, Chris Bell's got a bit of it, but I wish we had one or two more guys that could just absolutely burn it up. That's just a personal opinion. So, I'm looking for that in the classes going forward as well. And Josh, I don't know. I'll pass it off to you. I don't know if you've had a chance. Have you had a chance to look at any of the film yet on that?
I've watched a little bit of film on him, and I think you guys have really echoed. I mean, I don't want to rehash a lot of the same thoughts you guys had on him, but I do think it brings up an interesting discussion, and one we've had on this podcast and we've had in our group chat quite a few times is Brohm seems to, in the transfer portal, get the top notch, the players that everybody wants. I won't mention a certain defensive player that ended up being a hassle, but we took some top guys from the portal. We, by some metrics, had the top transfer portal of anybody last season.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like in high school recruiting, he takes more of these, I don't want to say diamond in the rough, but it's not the same caliber of player is what you see in the transfer portal. So
True.
It's kind of what is their philosophy here? Are they going to continue to really lean on the portal so heavy?
That was going to be my next point to get into this. So go ahead and elaborate on where you think we're going with that.
Yeah, well, I just, it's hard because in any sport, and we talked about it in baseball, we talked about it in basketball, if you can pay a junior or a sophomore or a senior who's proven that they can do it at this level, I think it's probably a better investment because you know what you have. A freshman's a bit of a lottery pick, but there is some thought process to you have to balance out your classes too, though. You have to get some guys you're going to develop. So is Brohm's plan to take more of these diamond in the rough guys and continue to hit the portal so hard? I don't know. I don't think we've had enough of a look into Brohm's recruiting.
It's a good debate, Josh, and I'll tell you where I stand on it is that, and I've talked about this on here, and it was an unpopular take. I think at the time I said 65-35 high school to portal. I'll go down 60-40. I would like 60% of the guys. Now, not exact. I'm just throwing out a number here, guys. So don't take it too literal now. But 60% of the guys high school, 40% portal, because I do think I'm not a Dabo Sweeney type. You definitely need a portal. You need to land some impact dudes because you're going to have positions in particular that you're short on. Like, let's say you have a bunch of deflections at the receiver position. You don't want to just bring in a bunch of freshman receivers to replace them. But I will say this. I worry a little bit. I'm a little concerned that we lean a little too heavily on the portal. And I think that reared its ugly head a little bit in the spring when we landed some guys in that first portal window and we crushed it, knocked it out of the park. And then we got the second portal period and we knew we were going to get some deflections from some guys that weren't getting playing time, that weren't getting a ton of practice. Opportunities, a bunch of reps. They were just kind of falling behind on the depth chart. But then we had the guys that we were not expecting. And we had probably 4 or 5 of those. And it was mainly because of not being a culture fit, of being a me first on a team first guy. And what happens is, like, when you recruit in high school, you can take a year or two and multiple visits to get to know these guys, at least somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean you won't bring a guy in from high school who ends up being a locker room problem. What it means, it's not a fail-proof system. There is no such thing. But what it means is you have a less margin for, like, you have a less risk. It's not as high risk. It's lower risk than when you cast a wide net. Like, if your goal is to land 30 portal guys, 35 portal guys or whatever we've been landing, you have to cast a net of like 200 to 300 portal guys. You have to cast a huge net, reach out to a bunch of people, and then you have 45 days to get a group of those guys and narrow it down to maybe like 60 or 70 guys. And then from there, you're not going to get all those guys. So then you've got to whittle down. You don't have time to look into the backgrounds of all these guys extensively. It doesn't matter how many staff members you get involved. There's so many players, so much movement, people entering the portal at the last second you didn't know were going to enter. And you're like, well, that'd be a nice guy to have on the team, at least skill set wise on the field. So then you've got to scramble and try to get in touch with them. And of course, if a guy like Tyler Barron says, I'd love to come to Louisville, you're not going to have all of this extensive information. Whereas if you had the time you had with these high school guys, you would be able to screen some of that and think, this may not be the best culture fit. And so you don't go away from the portal, but you got to be careful, in my opinion, leaning too heavily. And then, like, because you live by the portal, you die by the portal. You can get baptized.
You run into the Eric Musselman, Arkansas situation this year.
That's a good example in basketball. And I'll sum it up just by saying that high school guys can leave too. I know that. That's not my point, because that's the point a lot of people make. Well, you're high school guys. You can bring – my point is getting a locker room that meshes together and has good chemistry. And they might leave after a year or two. I'm not saying they won't. But I think it's an issue. Like, we don't want to continuously run into what we ran into with all that BS that came out from agents and their camps and these players and the reports we were getting behind the scenes. Yeah. We don't want that to become a regular thing.
It's a lot easier to build team culture through the high school level and recruit high school players and build the culture in your locker room that way than it is to build it through the portal.
Yeah. Well, and I think the portal age has to, and I'm not talking about numbers here, but it changes the way you recruit high school. Because listen, in my opinion, when you go in and you're identifying high school guys that you want to be as part of your class, there's 2 buckets. You find guys that you know can be in the 2 deep within the first 2 years, because those are the topping guys, and those are the guys that you're not going to have to fight to get to keep here. Those are the Clarks, the Sankers, the Williams, the Clarksons that by their sophomore year can get in that 2 deep and know that they're bound to see some playing time. And then the other bucket is finding guys that are developmental guys, but that you have to do your background with them and make sure that They're developmental guys that, one, are willing to stay here. If you really like them, are willing to stay here for a few years to develop and aren't going to jump ship. Or on the other end of that, if they don't develop, you got to make sure you're okay with telling them to hit the road in some way. But it's hard because there's guys in between there, and it's hard to recruit those guys because they're going to be guys that you lose that you want to keep to develop, but they're not going to want to wait 3 years to play snaps. So you got to kind of look at high school recruiting and put people into those two buckets, in my opinion.
Definitely not easy. I agree there, Pat. All right. So I didn't know if y'all had any final thoughts on that, on the football and the portal stuff. I want to give you a little time there just to make sure I didn't cut y'all off.
In Brohm we trust.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I want to sum it up. When I voice these things, these are my opinions, but I'm not like questioning our staff overall. You know, I worry about some things going forward, but I trust that our staff knows. I mean, they know a lot more than I do. I'm just a fan making an observation that I would probably focus more on leaning towards some more high school guys. But that's why Jeff Brohm is Jeff Brohm, and I'm just a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude. Do you know the movie quote? Anybody? Ross, I bet you know that movie quote.
Yeah, we all know that reference.
You'd be surprised. I've said that before. I said it at work the other day, and nobody had a clue. I was very disappointed.
You're in Indiana, so.
That has nothing to do with it. I work with, well, I'm not going to say what I was about to say. I'm not going to say what I was about to say.
You with a bunch of whites.
No, that's not it either. Well, that's not the reason, but yeah.
I'm just messing around.
I know it. So anyway, I did want to plug real quick. Again, if you're just joining us tomorrow, if you're an NCAA Football 25 guy, you're going to want to tune in tomorrow at 6 o'clock Eastern time. We usually go on Fridays for our game or whatever type of theme that Ty Elliott runs. Ty is going to lead the charge tomorrow. Connor's going to be on there. Connor had gotten a guest, Matt Brown, who has played the EA College Football 25 game. He knows all of the in and outs. Matt Brown is a big name on Twitter.
He's been a huge insider for things coming up with the game, what to look forward to.
If there's questions or input you guys want live on the pod about this game, that's the time to tune in. And it's a big deal. It's a big game. So it's a huge guess. It's a huge guess for all the gamers who are waiting for this college football game to come out. Again, that is tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern time. Mm-hmm. I did want to reiterate, we would love it if we could get some of these people, since 55% of our watch hours are from unsubscribed people. That's a lot of watch hours where people are watching the Third Banner. And if you're not tuning it away, you're either just, these guys are so stupid I can't look away from the screen, or you actually like listening to us. Either way, I don't care. Sub to the channel. If you're spending that much time, please.
Bunch of whites up on the screen.
Helps us out. Please like the channel or like the video as well. Help spread it to people that may not have seen our content yet, that are looking for updated Louisville sports information. With that being said, I think we touched on everything. We got some big things in the pipeline coming down, and we're not ready to quite announce those yet. But I know Ross is going to be announcing some things soon, and we'll announce those when we can. With that being said, did you guys have any final thoughts before we call tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you put it very well, Kyle. Like we've touched on everything, and I'm pretty sure we touched our viewers. So,
wait, what?
Oh.
Whoa.
Thank you.
Oh, that was Ross only. Let's specify that was Ross only.
Oh man, I love it. Thank you. I love doing this. Appreciate all y'all tuning in, man. I love having y'all. If you haven't, push the subscribe button, hit them likes, hit the notification. Again, like Kyle said, we're either like really stupid and you can't turn it off, or you actually enjoy it. So like,
either way,
just hit it.
Roll with it.
Hit it.
Yeah. Guys, watch tomorrow's episode, especially if our younger viewers and our gamers out there, this is something special, man.
Absolutely.
It's gonna for me. It's a nostalgia thing, man. I grew up on NCAA football games, spending all night at a friend's house. Going through 5 seasons of a Louisville dynasty. So this game's a nostalgia thing for me that I'm pumped about. Connor's probably not awake. He always says he goes to bed early.
Yeah, he's got a bad hip.
But I want to give Connor some major props. He's the young gun of the pod. We all are probably about 10 years older than
that.
Connor.
Is something an old person would say, a young gun or a young
Yeah,
buck.
well, yeah, I'm old now.
Snappers.
Connor's a Weisenheim.
And I'm extremely impressed with Connor's ability to network at his age.
Yeah. No, for sure.
He does a great job for himself, and it's big for the pod. So, Connor, you might never see this, but thumbs up, man. You're killing it.
Yeah. If you are in your hip or in bed, then we love you, buddy.
All
Yeah,
right.
I just wanted to say thanks again, everybody, for all your efforts to our team on the intro and the rebrand, everything we did for that, the logo. And we put in a ton of effort to that with that. And really, we're doing that to put out a better show for you guys. And our show would not be possible without you. So everything that we do is just to reinvest and make the show better, get better guests, update our our mics, our cameras, everything, so you get a better look at Ross. That's what we're trying to do here. So this would not be possible without all of you guys. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys know we really do appreciate you. And as time goes on, we will continue to reinvest everything that we have back into the show to keep giving you guys a better product. So thank you guys for listening. And
if you have any ideas that you would like to see implemented on the show, share them. Let us know. Definitely. We're open ideas that you got. We do this just for the audience, and I mean, we enjoy it because we're big hardcore Louisville fans, but we do it for you guys. So please provide us with any of your ideas. That being said, guys, I think I'm gonna wrap this bad boy up. Coleman Hawkins watch starts Friday, and we'll see, guys. Hopefully. Well, we're on tomorrow for the EA thing, but hopefully the next time we're on for a Louisville Center episode, hopefully by then, maybe we have some good news on Coleman Hawkins. With that being said, I'm going to sign it out with a Go Cards.
Go Cards.
Go Cards. Go Kroger, baby.